Alright, technical pilots, welcome back to this video. Today we'll be covering wheels and tires. I hope you all are following the playlist video by video. I hope you're not skipping any other video because these videos are very important for your DGC exams. And let's get started with wheels and tire. So most of the people think that wheels and tire are the same thing. Even I used to think that, but wheels and tire are completely different. Basically, wheels are a assembly on which you put your tires on. So here you can also see the black part that you see here. This is your tire, and this assembly that you're seeing here is your wheel. So on your wheels you put your tires, right? So this is the difference between a wheel and a tire. All right. What is the purpose of a wheel or a tire? So they have a very basic purpose. They supports the airframe, they provide mobility, you can move your aircraft around, they absorbs the shock on landing, right? And they decelerate the aircraft on landing. So you can attach your brake unit somewhere here and you can also decelerate the aircraft. So these are the four basic purpose of wheels and tires. Then you have something known as creep. Creep is the relative motion between the tire and the wheel. So as I already mentioned that this particular portion would be what your wheel, right? And the black portion surrounding it would be your tire, right? So in normal cases, what is supposed to happen is that your wheels should move with your tires, right? They should move together. But in certain situation, what happens is that your tire moves a little more than your wheel. Why does it happen? We'll see that. Why does it happen? But this problem that the wheel is moving a little more than your tire is called as creep. So creep can be detected by using creep markings. So you can see these white lines. White lines in this image are aligned with each other, right? And in this image, you can see that the white lines are not aligned, right? So what are these white lines? So basically, these are what creep markers. What do? Is we mark a line on the wheel rim and we mark another line on your wheel tire, right? So these markings, when you install the tire, they are aligned. But after certain use, what happens is that your tire might have had creep. So the tire moved more than your wheel. So the mark also moved with the tire, and hence the marks are not aligned in this case. So this is how you detect creep using your creep markers, right? And why is it so important? Why are we discussing this creep? Why is creep so deadly? So the reason is that if there is excessive creep, then it can tear the inflation valve and cause a tire blowout. So what is an inflation valve? It is just a valve which you use to inflate your tire with air, right? You might have seen your inflation valve on your footballs, tire, cycle, bicycle, cars, right? So that is an inflation valve. And what could happen if the tire is having an excessive amount of creep, that this inflation valve can get damaged and the tire can have a blowout. What is a blowout? A blowout is a sudden explosion of the tire. Like all the gases that are inside the tire will suddenly explode and cause a tire to blow out, right? So that is a blowout. So a creep, if not treated, can result in a tire to blow out, right? And why is a tire blowout so deadly? Because your whole aircraft, when it is, for example, on a landing roll, the aircraft had a tire blowout, then you can literally lose your direction control. You cannot move, turn the aircraft as per you want, right? The aircraft will go in whichever direction it wants to. You don't have any control of the aircraft when the tire explodes with such a high pressure, right? So if creep is not treated, it could result in an inflation valve damage, which could cause your tire to have a blowout, right? Then we have creep markings. As I mentioned, they are used to detect creep. One mark is on the wheel rim, another one is on the tire. These marks should always align. All right. So what are the causes of creep? So the first one is most likely in a newly installed tire. So whenever you install a new tire, you need to pay extra attention on the creep markings because it is most likely to happen in a new tire. The second thing is that can happen due to heavy braking, right? If you apply too much brake suddenly, then the creep can happen. And it is also due to incorrect tire pressure. So if your tires are not having enough pressure or they are having too much pressure, then creep can occur. And how do you prevent creep? So prevention is done by using knurled flange. What is a knurled flange? So in this particular image number one, you can see these these are nothing but grip markers. So basically, this is your wheel assembly, and you'll place your tire somewhere here, right? So when you inflate your tire, this will grip on to the knurled flange, right? So it will grip onto the knurled flange, and hence the tire will have sufficient grip over the wheel along with the wheel, right? And the second thing that you use is a tapered rim. So what is a tapered rim? It is nothing. It's just you taper the edges, right? As you can see in this image, the edges are tapered. So this also again helps in the tire gripping. When you will inflate this tire, it will grip onto the wheel rim, and hence it will prevent creep. Then you have material. So the tires are made up of what? Aluminum alloy. Why? See, magnesium can be used. It is lighter than aluminium. But the issue with magnesium is that it can catch fire. So although magnesium is lighter, but it can catch fire. Hence, we use what? Aluminum alloys in the construction of tires. So what is a fusible thermal plug? It is there to prevent a sudden blowout of a tire under heavy braking. So what happens is this is your tire and it is filled with gases, right? And if you apply too much brakes, the tire can heat up, right? And whenever the tire heat up, the gases also heats up, and this causes the gases to expand, right? This will cause the tire to increase in pressure, right? The tire will have a increased pressure which can cause the tire to suddenly explode, right? So if you apply too much brakes, the tire can heat up and can explode, right? So this sudden explosion is very dangerous. Why? Again, whenever there is a sudden explosion, you lose your directional control over the aircraft. You are no more able to control the aircraft, right? So this is again very dangerous. So we need to prevent this sudden explosion, right? So what do? Is we apply a fusible thermal plug here, right? So whenever the tire reaches a certain temperature, whenever the tire heats up, what happens is the fuse melts because it is made of a alloy which melts at a lower temperature. So this thing melts and it causes the air to escape through this hole, right? So the air will escape, but in a controlled manner. So the air won't just explode, right? So the tire will puncture like this, and the air will just escape in a controlled manner, right? And it will make the tire puncture like this, but it won't explode them. So you won't lose your directional control, right? So in this, you can see that this is your fusible alloy, and in the second picture, this fusible alloy has melted, and this piston has moved outward. So it was what holding the air inside, and the piston will just move out and it will let the air to escape, same as here, right? So this is the purpose of a fusible thermal plug, that it prevents a sudden explosion or a sudden blowout of the tire. Whenever you apply too much brakes, the brakes get heated up, which heats your tire, and whenever your tire heats up, then your gases expand, it could explode, right? That's why you do what? You add a thermal plug in your wheels which can let the air to escape, right? The fusible alloy will melt, it will let the air to escape. Then there are certain names that you need to remember. So this top portion of the tire, this portion, this is known as your crown, right? And then this would be your sidewall. The side portion of your tire is called as a sidewall, and the part that is joining, or the part that is between your sidewall and crown, this portion is known as your shoulder. All right. So this is your shoulder. And what is bead? So bead we'll see in the next slide, but you need to remember these points. What are these points? The first one is that the thread is made on the crown of the tire. So what is a thread? A thread is nothing but these lines that you're seeing on your tire, no? These are your threads, and they are not just made to make the tire look more fancy, but they have a special purpose with aquaplaning and hydroplaning that we'll see later in this lecture only, but we'll see shortly. So You need to remember these points. The first one is what? Threads are made on the crown of the tire. So this was your crown, and the threads that you're seeing here, these lines, they are made on what? Crown, right? The first point is very simple. Threads are made on your tire, on the crown of your tire, right? And sidewalls allow the tire to be flexible, right? These sidewalls are there and they make the tire more flexible. And the bead is seated inside the flange. This point we'll see in the next slide. So here you can see this portion over here. This is your bead, right? And the only purpose of the beads is that they sit inside the flange. So this that you're seeing here, this is your rim flange, right? And the beads, they sit inside this flange, right? So this is your beads and they sit inside the flange. That is all you need to remember. So in tire construction, tires are consisted of what? Plies. What are plies? These lines that you're seeing over here, these strips that you're seeing over here, these are what? Plies. So plies are either made of what? Cotton, rubber, or nylon, right? And these plies are then covered with rubber. So in the second picture, you can see that the rubber is covering these plies. So it will just cover up this whole ply and it will be used to make a tire. And every tire has a ply rating. What is a ply rating? Ply rating gives an idea of the strength of the tire, right? Ply rating does not mean the number of plies, right? Ply rating means the strength of the tire, right? So if you have seen a tire closely, you might have seen that the tire has something written on the sidewall of it. These are the details written by the manufacturer. So this 32 or 32 that you're seeing here, this is the ply rating of the tire. And ply rating means strength of the tire and not the number of plies that are being used, right? So the ply rating is mentioned on what? Sidewalls, and it means the strength of the tire, not the number of plies that are used. So if 32 is mentioned, it does not mean that the 32 plies are being used to make this tire. No, it means it's just an indication of your strength, how tough the tire is, right? And tires are constructed with two methods. First is your bias or cross ply. Second is your radial. So in bias or cross ply, your plies are arranged in a cross manner. So these are your plies and then these are your plies. So you arrange them in a what? Crossing manner, right? And a general angle between these plies would be what? 45 degrees, right? And in a radial manner, you arrange the plies from bead to bead. So this is your bead. You take it from here and then you join it again in your bead. So this is your radial in which you join the plies from bead to bead. Okay. Then tire threads. Again, these are your tire threads and they have a very special purpose in aquaplaning or hydroplaning. So as it is written here, the purpose is water dissipation, right? When the aircraft rolls on wet runway, hence they prevent aquaplaning or hydroplaning. And the most common type of tire thread is known as a ribbed type. So these that you're seeing, they can be in various patterns, right? Some tires might have it like this in a cross pattern. So the most common thread type is a ribbed type. So this that you're seeing here is a ribbed type of tire, right? Then what is hydroplaning and aquaplaning? So when the tire rolls on a wet runway, a thin layer of water may form under the wheel, which cause the wheel to lose contact with the runway, and the coefficient of friction becomes almost zero. So this you can see here the wheel, and there is a thin layer of water under the wheel, right? So this layer of water does not let the wheel to contact with the ground, right? This is the ground, right? And the wheel is not able to touch the ground. Why? Because of the water layer, right? So this is called as aquaplaning or hydroplaning. So the wheel is literally skidding on the runway and it is not able to touch the ground. And since it is not able to touch the ground, it is not able to apply brakes, right? So this is something that happens when the runway is wet, right? And the coefficient of friction almost becomes zero, and you also have this aquaplaning speed formula. So this is nothing, it's just 9 under root of your tire pressure in psi. So you need to write your tire pressure in psi and 9 of under root, right? So this will give you what? Aquaplaning speed. So this is again very important for your exams. You need to remember this thing, right? And let's continue. So some aircraft nose wheel may also have chines, and their purpose is to direct water away from the engine to avoid engine flame out. So chines are what they are here. These are your chines, and what they do is they direct the water away from the engine. So the water will go like this, and the chances are that it can enter the engine. The engine might be somewhere here, right? The engines might be somewhere here. So if the water goes into the engines can flame out, right? So these chines are installed so that they direct the water away from the engine, right? So they won't let it enter the engine, or they won't throw the water towards the engine. So that is why we have what? Chines. And then there is this thing that you can just keep in your head, category of tire pressure. So low pressure would be 25 to 35 psi, aircraft using grass surface. And then we have medium pressure 35 to 70 psi for aircraft that are using grass or medium foam surfaces. High pressure is what? 70 to 90 psi for aircraft using concrete surfaces. And then there is extra high pressure, which is from 90 to up to what 350 psi, and this is again for aircraft using concrete surfaces. So you can just make a note of this. This might be asked in your exam. You can just remember this if you can, right? Then 90% of the tire related accidents are due to incorrect tire pressure. So this is a fact that whatever the accidents that are related to tires happens due to what? Incorrect tire pressure. So you need to make sure that your tires are always at correct pressure, right? And what will happen if you overinflate the tire pressure? If you fill in more pressure in your tire than required, so what will happen is you can have a crown wear. So crown is what? The top portion of the tire, right? This on which the threads were made. This could get damaged, right? You can have a crown wear. And then if you underinflate the tire, then you can have a shoulder wear or a creep. So shoulder was this part, right? So you can have a shoulder wear or a creep. So this is a problem with overinflating and underinflating the tire. Alright, so that is it for this particular video in which we have covered wheels and tires. I hope you enjoyed this video. You made your notes. We'll come up with the next part very, very soon. Alright, bye bye. Enjoy.